Díomh fáilte rófar fad. Fáilte rófig Q&A na híanacht. Welcome to tonight's Q&A. Tásúla an gúisih go réag ma, hope you're all well. Agus tá Aisling lomanacht.
Tá Díomh gachtainna, hi everyone. Tásúla am gúisih go ma. Agus tá míidir fad ag súil go mór leis seo. We're very much looking forward to this now. We have lots of great questions in anocht.
An bhathair fad. Go bit tús leis mar sin an céad cish. So let's get started with our first question here. And it's from Eftimius in the UK. And his question is, would you like to read that, Aisling?
Yeah, Kinta Dinimation. So, why does the a-aher not get a prefix, but a-haher gets it? So, and then the second question they have is, so you would say anhéad áit for the first place, but then andara háit. So I think she would like some, or they would like more of kind of a clarity around that. So this is a grammatical structure. The first one is a grammatical structure when it comes to the possessive pronoun. So for example, in English, my, your, his, her. So in Irish, there's different rules for if the noun you're talking about begins with a vowel or with a consonant. So for example, if we take aher, which starts with a vowel, if you want to say his father, there's no H. It would just be a-aher. So once we see that there's no H after a, we know it's his is the possessive pronoun. But if it's a-haher with the H before it, we know it means her father. Okay? So it's just something grammatically to identify who we're speaking about. And then the second part, so anhéad will always take a H in the noun after it if it begins with a consonant, but anhéad won't take a H in the noun if it starts with a vowel, okay? And then Siobhán, you have a little explanation for andara, so I'll leave that over to you.
All right. So andara háit, as you can see there on the screen, áit has had a H added to it. So andara háit. And the reason for that is because dara ends in a vowel and áit begins with a vowel. And it runs much more smoothly when you say andara háit rather than andara áit. So that's one of the reasons for that.
So hopefully that makes a bit more sense now and it's a bit clearer. But there's just grammatical rules for the possessive pronouns so we can tell and identify who it belongs to, who the noun belongs to. So we'll move on to the next one. So the next question. So they say that they know that an Tuaisceart is the north and an Deisceart is the south, an Tíorthair is the east and an Tíorthair is the west. So why do we say ag dul ó huig when going north and ag dul ó yas for going south, ag dul sair for going east and ag dul sheer for going west? Why are there these changes? Why is there a different word for everything? So I think they're just a bit confused about that. So Ervalat Ishin a Vinu, and Siobhán has a great little infographic here to help. But Ervalat Ishin a Vinu, Siobhán.
Good keen Jenny mission. So I'll explain that now. So as you can see, there are different words depending on the direction one is going or someone else is going or coming from, or it could be in reference to the wind or to an area as well. As you might know, Tuaisceart Éireann is the title for Northern Ireland. So that's an example. Now, all the ones that are beside arrows in this little infograph, they're referencing movement. And that now isn't too different at all from English, because in English we've got such words as westerly and easterly, and the weather forecast usually in reference to the wind. You also have westward. So an example of westerly would be anear. Anear, this word here, anear, from westerly. And westwards then would be sheer. Now, you don't use it as commonly in English as you would use these words in Irish, but very similar there are very similar counterparts in English. It's just that they aren't used the same way or as often. But when you think of it like that, it's not that foreign a concept in a way.
Yeah, I think something that's a very good way of explaining it, because it's very confusing for a lot of people, Irish people included, learning these things in school. It's very confusing, but it's basically a different word depending on if you're stationary, if you're traveling somewhere, or if you're coming from a certain direction. And it might be the opposite to what you think it would be. So, for example, you gave the example in your question, you said Igdal ó Huig, so going north. You think "oh huig" would mean something else, but it can be a bit confusing. But once you understand that there's a different term for where you're positioned, where you're going, and where you're coming from, it can be little bit easier to get your head around it. So I'm still kind of coming to terms with that sometimes myself. I have to stop for a minute and say, okay, what one do I need now? So hopefully you'll get your head around it soon anyway.
Another thing I find is the ones that begins with a dewey, a near, and yes, an air. They're the ones that are coming from that direction, as you can see. They're all the ones that are, in this case, are next to the arrows that are facing Ireland. So that's one way of remembering it. The one that begins with the A, that's the one that's heading towards you. Mm-hmm. So an air from the east, kind of, but it's coming towards you. And a dewey from the north, again, it's coming towards you. Another way of remembering a dewey
is... Yeah, that's a good way to remember it, actually. Any little tip like that is always helpful.
That's it. And the wind as well, and the northerly wind, or a wind from the north. So that's one way. If you know little phrases often, that'll help everything else kind of fall into place.
Yeah, exactly. Díreach
é. So let's move on from that then. So let's see. Our next question then is from Thomas Mclone in Connecticut, USA, and his question is about the surname Mclone. He says he knows what it means, but he's wondering if the kill in such surnames, in such names as Kilpatrick or Kildare or Kilkenny, refer to a servant of Patrick or as a tribute to honour St. Patrick or other saints. I've theorised that the GL in my last name functions in the same way. The GL is just a Western Gaelic version of the Kill that is used around Dublin and the southwest of the island. Since the rules and standards of the Irish language were not written down until rather late in its history, this variation turned up in the surnames orderly. So Dlone refers to devotee of Owen or St. John. If you pronounce Kill and GL right after one another, the sounds are very similar. My question is my theory correct? So what I would say, do you have anything to add there, Aisling?
Yeah, I think we were kind of chatting about this online beforehand, and the Kill usually refers to a church, as you said, or a kind of a place of where a church might have been, or a place people would have gathered for mass or for religious purposes. But with specific surnames, I think you might be better for this one, Siobhán. There's a very good book that kind of does go into details of surnames. If you would like some more information, Thomas, and it's called The Surnames of Ireland by Edward Mclone. I hope I'm saying that right. That's a very, very good book if you know you do want to go into further the history maybe of your name. But Siobhán, you have a pretty good grips with this one, so I'll hand it over to you.
All right. So but that's very good. It's very. I hadn't heard of that book on the surnames of Ireland, so it's always good to have that. There's another thing. I'll see now if there's also the website Slina, and that website is good to go to find out about surnames. So I'll just put that up on the screen. slina.ie.ie. So to get back to the surname Mclone. So as you can see, Mclone means Mcgilly Owen, as you're saying, a devotee of Saint Owen, or the son of the devotee of Saint Owen, to be precise. Now, you're correct that there are other surnames with the same meaning that in Irish include Mcgilla, but are said in the anglicised version as Kill. An example of that is the surname Kilbride, Mcgillavridge. So that's an example of that, Mcgillavridge. Just get that in the screen away. So the son of the devotee is saying Bridget, that would be. Now, the thing is, though, you have to differentiate between the surnames and the place names. Now, when you're talking about Kilkenny or Kildare or somewhere like that, it's a different story. As Aisling was saying there, Kill in a place name refers to church. Now, that's the historical meaning. Nowadays, kill can mean more something in reference to a graveyard or burial. And a famous example of that is the book Crea na Kille by Martin O'Kane. And that would be roughly translated as the soil of the graveyard soil. And it's all about people buried in a graveyard. So that's generally how you'll hear it used today. But traditionally it did mean a church. But of course, a church, graveyard, they're usually next to each other. So it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that's the story there with kill. So you're correct to a certain extent. If to correct when you're thinking of the surnames, but when it comes to the place names, that's a different story. The kill will mean church. Another thing about the word there, gilla, and just to get that up there and so on. So the word gilla, that has meant devotee in surnames, but more recently it would mean like kind of an attendant. It's not used that much, I would say, in modern Irish. The more recent, you might hear it in older stories a bit about like a shop boy or like someone who's kind of like a messenger boy kind of thing. A gilla, it's someone who helps out in a way in more modern Irish. Anything else in regards that I'm forgetting? Oh yes, when you look, if you want to know about place name, there's a great website called luganum.ie. So I'll just get that up here now. So Luganum is a great website for finding out about all the place names in Ireland, and it also includes pronunciations and often translations as well. So all these links will be placed and notes will be placed in the blog post that's attached, and it's in the description box of this video. All right. So have you anything more to add there, Aisling?
I was thinking there, I'm not sure how true this is, but I remember hearing somewhere that kill is also in place names has an association with kial, meaning like a cell. And it was kind of in maybe pre-Christian times where there was a kind of a group of people, like a group of people together. But I'm not sure how true that is now, but I was just thinking that there while you were saying it. So that could be all raw mate, or there could be some truth to it. So yeah, but that's probably a very good explanation of his name. And yeah, Gyula is very much in older stories, isn't it? Kind of like a servant person or a helper, messenger, things like that. So yeah, I think that's all for that one. So then, and Hied Kesht Ella, the next one is from Brian, and he's in Ohio. So he is a Public member as well, and he had a question for us last time about filler words. So his question now this time is he's interested in exclamations. So he says, what do Gaelgori say to exciting events or good news? A point, a goal, or a win? So he gives examples in English like yes, hooray, yippee, things like that. And he also wants some exclamation words for unfavorable news, unwelcome news, or a disappointment, or near curses or things like that. So this is right up my street. I love this question. And we'll probably give a lot of examples here. So we might do a separate maybe post on Pubble or a blog post about this if it's something that interests people. But would you like to start with your ones, Siobhán?
Yeah, sure. So the ones I have now, I have a mixture here. So one of the first I have is igmagatatu. So that one now, I guess it's mostly positive, I would say, igmagatatu. But it could also be negative, but it's mostly positive, igmagatatu. And it means like kind of you're joking, like as in surprise, or also I guess it could be in shock, but mostly surprise, like when people say in English, you're joking, you're kidding me. That's what igmagatatu. So igmaga means joking, or mocking even, but it's mostly used to mean joking. Agus go gi me leis gur faoin madig tafel. Apologies about the dog barking. So that's the case here with magatatu. Another one now this one's more negative, and that's na haber. So if someone, let's say that's more in shock or kind of dismay, especially if you come across something you don't like, as in like if you walk in to the kitchen and the cat has spilt all the milk all over the place, and you're like, no haber, like don't tell me this has happened kind of thing, or not again, it could be like that, no haber. So it's don't tell me, but more negative. Another one then, I suppose in a similar vein, asokje. So asokje is like, for God's sake, for the love of God kind of thing. It could be in desperation or something. And it literally means from the breast of God. And asokje, so that's something you could say if you're just kind of dismayed by something. Another similar one in a way, but I guess with a slightly different meaning, and that's GR Sawwall. GR Sawwall, and that's more God help us, as in like, oh no, don't kind of thing. So GR Sawwall. It could also be like you're kidding me as well, or something like that. So it can be used as like that as well. Another similar one would be a waiten. So if you see something shocking or just flabbergasting, just say a waiten. That's and it literally means a virgin. So a waiten, if you see something kind of that's really like wow kind of thing, but when you say wow sarcastically, kind of a waiten. Another one then I was thinking of was imilet and gradlet. So if someone's annoying you, you can just say imilet. Imilet simply means go away. But gradlet is more like just like shove off, just get out of my sight. It's not polite. Imilet may not be polite either, but it's not as it's not as abrupt as gradlet is. And then when it comes to praise and positive things, I was thinking there I think you've way more to add here, Aisling, but these are the things I was thinking of, and they're very Ulster things, surprisingly. And these are bully fee, bully mra, and bully girshi. And these are all ways of saying, like, well, the first one is good men, like bully mra is like good woman kind of thing, and bully girshi is good girl kind of thing. But it's very much, if you're at any event in Ulster, any Irish language event, and someone's, let's say, singing a song or something, or playing an instrument, you might hear one of these, just as in like bravo or good men kind of thing, or good on you, that sort of thing. So I think you've way more to add there, though, Aisling.
I don't know about that now. Yeah, they're I love these kind of words, but mine are very Munster. So I don't know if I think I remember Brian telling me that he had a particular interest in Ulster Irish, so he probably would like those at the end that you mentioned there, bully fair, bully mná. But yeah, there's the ones I have here now are very Munster. So if something is good and you're surprised by it, you could say dar fia, which is kind of like, oh my God, like, you know, it's kind of my God, but in a good surprise way. And you could say molair as well. And I think that's more Connemara as well. It's kind of like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So then Gavordiering is a mixture of a few things. It can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It can kind of be sarcastic as well. So that's a very useful one. Hanuman Deal is very, very Munster. And that's kind of, oh my God. And it's shock and it's good. And then no das simply means, oh, isn't that lovely? And that's a nice one to throw in if people are just telling you a good story. You could say, oh, no das, no das. And very often you'll find in Munster they say no instead of nach. So instead of saying nach will, they'd say no full. So that's just something dialectical there. And then if you're shocked or fed up, you could say a hirkish, which is kind of like a widen. I think a widen is quite Connemara, and then a hirkish would be what they would say in Munster a lot of the time. And then in anam day is kind of the same as Dios or Vol, kind of like, oh, in the name of God, Jesus, like, you know, it's a bit, you're just fed up with things. Manaira then is kind of, I'm embarrassed, you know, I'm shocked or I'm embarrassed for you. So if someone said something happened or they heard the story, you go, oh, Manaira, like, oh God, that's embarrassing, you know. And then the next few are for kind of a point or a goal in sport, or if someone is playing an instrument well or singing a song, like you said, Siobhán, you could say Anna ar or Anna van, or Ordar or the van. So kind of like good woman, good man yourself, or a great man, great woman. People very often as well just say hup, H-U-P, hup. If it's a point or a goal you're talking about, you say Anna fointe or Anna chul. So like a very good point, very good goal. And then a very, very common one in Munster as well is Mclone, which is like bravo or bravo. So Mclone, bravo to them. Mclone to, bravo to you. And then the last two I have, sorry, I'm going on here now for ages, but so if something bad or sad happens and you want to commiserate or share your condolences with someone, Mullain is kind of like pity or Muvrone. And then Ní Maithlim the Hribloid is more for like a grievance. So if someone passes away or someone loses a very, you know, big opportunity, say Ní Maithlim the Hribloid, which literally means I don't like your trouble. But it kind of means I'm sorry for your loss. That's how you'd say that in English. So I could definitely do a post on Pubble about this and add all the ones we mentioned, or a blog post about it if people are interested in it. But I think that's where the wealth of Irish really comes out in these kind of things, you know. So I love that question, and I hope that satisfies your curiosity, Brian. So anything else there for that one, Siobhán?
I was just thinking there, Ní Maithlim the Hribloid. I was thinking that, as you said there, I'm sorry for your loss. It's like how people often say at funerals, I'm sorry for your troubles. And I'm thinking if that's the mixture of the Irish Ní Maithlim the Hribloid, which would be used, could be used at funerals as well. And I'm sorry for your loss, perhaps. I don't know which came before which, but it's an interesting
it's hard
thought.
to know. I'm not sure if they say I'm sorry for your troubles in other countries. And if they don't, then it could be a thing that started in Ireland. So there's definitely crossovers there. Tá sé Anna spéisiúil. Okay, so do you want to go on to the next one?
So let's go on to the next one then. So Fraser in Edinburgh asked what the difference is between the word orm and ormsa. In what way, for example, would the sentence tá duanala ormsa be different from using orm and just saying tá duanala orm? Okay, so I think you have an explanation for that there, Aisling.
Yeah, so this actually came up in one of the walkthrough lessons we did a few weeks ago. So anytime you see sa like that at the end of a prepositional pronoun, and what that is urum, dum, agum, those kind of ones, anytime you add the sa to the end of it, that suffix, you're basically adding emphasis. So in this context, hadawnala urum sa, that means there's a spider on me. It's not on anyone else, it's on me. So when you add sa to the end of a prepositional pronoun, you're emphasizing that it's you. So the example we had in the walkthrough a few weeks ago was is as éireann dumpsa. So I'm from Ireland. And in English, you would just emphasize the word with your voice. You kind of just lay emphasis on it. But in Irish, to emphasize something, you add that suffix. And there's different suffixes for every person. But for me, it's just adding sa. So tá dawnala urum sa, there's a spider on me. So you're just emphasizing that it's on me. So hopefully that kind of is a clear explanation for you. Would you have any other tips there? Any other explanations?
I don't think so, to be honest. That's about it. That's about as much as has to do with that. The sa, I suppose, another point to make is that the sa can come after a noun like machatsa, my cat, machatsa. In that case, you're actually not putting the sa. You're not adding it to the pronoun, but rather to the noun, machatsa. So you can have that as well. But since we're just talking about prepositional pronouns, as in dom, agam, fum, in that case, the sa is added to that. But yeah, there's not much more I think to add there. When it comes to, I guess, when it comes to actual usage, that's it. When it's just, when you're saying that, when you're stressing that it's in regards yourself, not anyone else. And also, it's a bit stylistic as well. I think it's something that you kind of pick up as you go along, because it's something that you get a feel for. Oh, I should use it now rather than not use it. It's like how people change the intonation of their voice in English, and they stress certain words and don't stress other words. So it's similar to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in some dialects as well, it's used a lot heavier maybe than it would be in other dialects. So that's something as well to take into consideration. But yeah, untach. So then the next one, I think this is from the same person.
That's it. Fraser also asked, is there a rule about when to use a to, for example, between a tonen instead of tomud? So there would be differences there. Have you any thoughts on that there, Aisling?
Yeah, I think the way you summarized it here, you have notes here for us, and I think that's the best way. It's kind of a hard one to take out of context, because they're kind of, a thomid is the verb, and a thonning would be mostly to do with an copula, the copula. So they're different structurally. But I think you've summarized it quite well, Siobhán, so I'll leave it over to you.
All right.
Yeah.
So thomid, you would use that before an adjective. So an example of that might be an example might be thomid gama, or thomid granmor. We're funny, we're funny. So you're describing how you were. Thomid gama, thomid granmor. But when you're using a tonen, you would use that with a noun. So an example could be Éirni a tonen, like we're Irish. And in the structure here also places emphasis on the fact you're Irish rather than any other nationality. Éirni a tonen. It's kind of like saying it's Irish we are. Kind of, that sounds a bit poetical or something, or like something out of a drama, but that's the idea there. Instead of just saying is éirni muid, we are Irish, éirni a tonen, like we are Irish, as in you're stressing it rather than being anything else. So that's it. I hope that explains it well enough. But sentence structures, there are different ways, and a lot of the sentence structures in Irish do depend on if you're going to use a noun, or if a noun is like the subject of the sentence, if you're going to get into grammatical terminology, or if it's going to be an adjective. So that can make a difference there. But of course, we'll have these sentences in the notes as well on Pobble. So if you need more time to kind of soak this information in and figure it out for yourself and research it a bit more, because some of this could be a bit heavy for some people, not as heavy for others, because everyone is at a different stage, and you need to go through the different stages. You need to take baby steps before you can run. So that's grand. But if anyone needs to find out more, we'll have this information and perhaps even a few more links in the Pobble, on the blog post on Bitesize.Irish website. All right, so I guess we'll move on then to the next question. And this is also from Fraser.
Yes, it is. Yeah, this is the last question from Fraser. So they ask, do you have any simple mnemonic devices which can help learn any parts of Irish, like we have I before E except after C? So the only one, it's not really a mnemonic, but it's something we always hear in school, is the dentals. So that is basically DNTLS, those letters. And they very often don't, the kind of grammatical rules that you learn might not apply to nouns that start with those letters or adjectives that start with those letters. So in school, they might tell you a rule and they'd say, Shachas na dentals, so except the dentals. So for example, a preposition plus the article plus an aru, so on mord, on the table. But then if you wanted to say on the ground, Eran Taliv, it wouldn't be Eran Daliv. So that's something that we would have learned in school a lot. That's the kind of main one that comes to my mind anyway. Cad Foots, Siobhán, what about you?
Well, the only one I know of is this other one now. So that's true about the dentals. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a very good one. That's very, because it's extremely common, that one. Another one there would be a one for remembering the oro. I think this is the only one I know. And there's one for remembering the oro. And this is one example. Now, I've come across another one that I can't remember it, but this is, I guess they're all the one anyway. This one is as good as the other one, but it was also for learning the oro. So that, for example, is like, as you said there, Aisling, Eran Maward. So MB, sometimes a consonant is added to another consonant after, for example, after a preposition on the table, Eran Maward. That sort of thing. There's different reasons, but we'll just look at this mnemonic now to learn which letter goes with which. So, for example, M goes with B, G goes with C, and this is one way of learning it. Many boys go camping near ditches, behind fences, no girdles, backpacking down there. So behind, there's actually, it's BHF, is what's BH is actually added to F, so that's why behind is a good one. So that's one there, and also so BP, NG. So this is a good way of remembering which goes with which. So if you've any trouble remembering that, because some people do, I think a lot of people learn them, kind of pick them up. I think anyone who's been at school, I think in Ireland, tends to pick them up naturally enough. But of course, if you're an adult learner, you don't tend to pick things up as easily as a small child does. So this may be very helpful for you.
I've never heard that before. That's a really handy one, because it's something that I think we assume to be quite intuitive when you learn it in school, but it might not be, as you said, when you're learning as an adult. So that's very, very good. So we move on to the next one.
Yeah. So what do we have here? So we have James Mulligan from Florida in the USA. And you have a cultural question, and that cultural question is there any difference between the terms an Gorta Mór and an Drochíl, two expressions that make reference to the Great Famine? And he wants to know if they are synonyms or not. So here are the words that James is referencing. So an Gorta Mór and an Drochíl. And what's your take on that there, Aisling?
Well, I've never heard of any explanation differentiating the two. So my answer is solely based on my own experience and what I've heard. So an Gorta Mór is kind of what you'd see in history books, and maybe if you're watching a documentary about the Great Famine, it would say an Gorta Mór. It's very much the kind of historical term for it. And then an Drochíl I've heard in speech from people telling stories, if they had relatives who survived through the famine, or stories from their local area. So if you're in a Gaeltacht area and they're speaking about how the famine affected that region, they would call it an Drochíl. So it seems to be more of a colloquial term, and it kind of emphasizes the difficulty of the time as well, because an Drochíl, apart from the Great Famine, it literally means the bad life, you know. So that's what they're trying to refer to there in conversation. So that would be my only experience kind of with the difference between the two. So I don't know if that's necessarily correct, but that's my experience. Would you have anything else there, Siobhán?
I'd have the same experience, to be honest. I'd say the same thing. An Gorta Mór does seem to be used way more often than an Drochíl. And an Gorta Mór doesn't literally mean the Great Famine, so that's possibly why it's used as well more commonly. But an Drochíl is used as well. But I guess perhaps that could have a deeper sense in a way, since we are calling it the bad life. And it whereas an Gorta Mór does seem a bit more restricted in a sense, and if it does kind of convey a more restricted timeline or something, where on Drohil it does have a deeper, more personal kind of it conveys the suffering more than just saying Gorta more. So that's possibly why it's preferred by some. Yeah.
I've heard it as well, if especially in books, if people are talking about, oh, their grandmother came from Androch Hale, so it kind of, as you said, there's a deeper meaning to it. It kind of would, from that description, you'd understand the character of the person much better. So if they've come from the famine, if they survived the famine, you understand their character. So Hánig Shias Androch Hale, she came from the famine. So you know, they might have seen a lot of suffering, they've been through a lot, they're a very strong person, resilient person. So yeah, definitely a deeper meaning to it for sure. So hopefully that is a good explanation for you. He also mentioned that in our last Q&A we were speaking about words that we liked, and he mentions his favourite phrase in Irish is Aragla na Hagla, which means just in case. So thanks for sharing that with us, James. So we have another James then in the next question, and he says, I'm never sure when to use the second letter H as in wa, so ma and then ana wa or ana va. So he basically wants to know when you add a shevu or when you add a H to an adjective. So would you like to take this one away, Siobhán?
All right. So you can simplify it down to just two instances. The first one would be, we'll take the example ma. So anwa, very good, anwa. So after an, which means very, you would say wa. And another case would be after a feminine noun, benwa, a good woman, benwa. So now when it comes going back to anwa, if you can also have rowa, which is too good. Now that's the one now that's a little bit different, as I show, because that actually creates one word. So it's a little bit different in that case. Rowa, too good. But generally speaking, that's when it happens. Now, in Ulster Irish, it can also happen after a preposition with the definite article. So an example of this would be, let's see, what would that be now? Igengeta, I guess. Igengeta. So that's with a noun, igengeta. So elsewhere in Ireland, in the other dialects, Connacht Irish and Munster Irish, you would use the oru or eclipses, as we saw there with the thing about many boys and all of that, with that mnemonic. That's how it would be used. But in Ulster Irish, instead of adding an oru, when you're saying on the or at the, you use the shevu, that is the H after the G in this case, or H after a name, or whichever consonant is being used. So that's really the 3 or 4, if you want to be more specific, cases. So since James is up in Bangor, County Down, I thought I'd mention that about the shevu after the preposition and the definite article. So I hope you found that helpful there, James.
Yeah, there's a few as well. I'm trying to think now. Most prepositions on their own would take a shevu as well. So like sa gaeltacht in the gaeltacht, sa gaeltacht. But then there are some very few prepositions that don't take the shevu. So if it's a preposition, yeah, there's like egg, as, quigle, go. I think they're the 5 ones, and all the rest of them would take it. So vord on a table, vord, that would take a shevu as well. Yeah, I think that's all of them. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. This is from Laurie Holmes in North Carolina. So she says, I'm still unable to find a program that will allow me to type a Faduda. The little help YouTube videos mention Windows 8, but we now have Windows 10. This has been a frustration for many of us, or many years. Do you know of anything that would help Gurv me to Mahagot? So Siobhán has the answer for you.
So I hope this would work. Since you're not in Ireland, that's the thing, it does depend on the type of keyboard settings you have on the computer. Since you mentioned Windows 10, let's go with the idea of Windows 10 is not Apple or Linux or anything. So for what you could try is to go into the Windows 10 keyboard settings and search for the English, Ireland, Irish keyboard. And it should have this written on it as well, or you may see this as well. So just put this in the screen. ENGGA. So you might see this too. ENG standing for English and GA standing for Irish, the Irish language, Gaeilge. But before that it was English, Ireland, Irish, and then these letters. Now you should be able to download that, and you should be able to choose that as well as your American keyboard in the keyboard settings on your computer. And how you would then type the Fada would be to press down on Alt-GR, so I call it anyway, probably different ways of pronouncing it, but I'll just write up what I mean. So that's a key. Now maybe they're not, I'm not sure if that's universal. That's a universal key. We have them on the, at least the keyboards available in Ireland. It might be different on the American ones, but you should have a key like that in our keyboards. It's right next to the right of the space bar. So what I'll do is I'll write those instructions in the blog post that's linked in the description of this video, and hopefully that'll work for you. And so it's just, the keyboards are just so different everywhere. That's the thing. It's quite difficult, but downloading it and figuring out how it should work on your keyboard is what's to do, I guess. It's unfortunate there isn't just this one size fits all thing, but that's the thing. It can be a bit tricky that way, but hopefully you'll finally manage to get the Fada on your computer.
Yeah, I have a Windows 10 now, and I know I have the Irish keyboard, obviously, but that's how I would get a Fada. And I do believe I had to change my keyboard to ENGGA, as you said, Siobhán. So hopefully that will work for you now. But it's very frustrating when you have to be copying and pasting Fadas the whole time. It's no good. So hopefully that'll clear that up for you. Okay, so I think we're on to our last question now. So this one is from Robert, and he's in Tacoma in Washington. Hope I said that right. So he is interested in the pronunciation of Slán go fóill. So he hears us at Bitesize saying it one way, and then he did a different course with instructors from Dublin and heard it a different way. So he's just he wants to clarify the pronunciation of it. Firstly, if you're ever confused about pronunciation, or you hear something pronounced completely differently, it's probably a dialectical thing, because they can vary hugely in pronunciation. And there are two very good resources for pronunciation. So there's tonglen.ie, which has a pronunciation database, and most words are available there in every dialect. So you can type in a word, go into the database and listen to it in Munster, Ulster or Connacht. And I know there isn't really a Dublin dialect as, you know, per se. There's one being developed, I suppose, because there's a lot of Gaelgory now in Dublin. But they might have learnt it from a different dialect. So you can listen to all three versions of the word and see, okay, this is the one I was hearing. So obviously that's the Ulster dialect or whatever it might be. And the same on folklore.ie. There's also a pronunciation database for a lot of words there. What you'll see is the word in Irish, and then you'll see CMU, which is Connacht, Munster, Ulster. And you can click on either of those letters and it will give you the pronunciation. So I would say Slán go fóill, which is like how you said foal, F-O-A-L, like the word for foal horse. But I'm not sure, you also said foil, so maybe that's a more Ulster way of saying it. But I think it's just a dialectical thing. Would you have anything else to add there, Siobhán?
Oh yeah, the thing is, if you listen to the recordings on folklore.ie, because there's no recordings for the word foal or go fóill on Tonglen. So sometimes you have the recordings for certain words on one site and not on the other. So be sure to check both. And sometimes you can have completely different recordings on both for the same word. So so if you check out folklore.ie and type in Gafol, as you can see here, Slán Gafol. So just type in Gafol and you will see the recordings beside C, M and U, as you mentioned there, Aisling. So how I heard it there was that in Connacht they were describing it as Gafoliach. You'd often hear that from a lot of the Connacht speakers, Gafoliach, which isn't how it's spelt at all. But when it comes to Ulster, it sounded like foal, as in a foal, like a baby horse. And the Munster recording there sounded more like foal. The il sounded the in foal, with a very slender L. So perhaps it just depends on the speaker in that case. So it's one of those things. It's subtle, very subtle difference. And so it's and it is spelt a bit unusual because it's not just FO for the IL, because that would just be the slender L and that would do the job, but there's actually two L's there, so that's telling you something as well, and that there's two L's, so it is spelt a bit unusual, so it's giving you a bit of freedom in regards to pronunciation. But do check out folklore.ie and type in Gafol and have a listen yourself. All right, so I think that's all the questions we had there from our from that we gathered over the past week or so. So let's check some of the questions in the live chat. So it's great to see how it's great to see how interactive you all are, all the messages and everything. So it's brilliant. And so let's see there if there's any questions here. I thought I spotted a question earlier on. So all right, so let's see, I'll bring this comment up here from Salome's. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right there. So where can I find Irish language TV series, talk shows, news broadcasts, documentaries, YouTube videos, etc. with Gaeilge subtitles that precisely and fully correspond to spoken Irish content? So there's some of, now it's a bit rare, but some of the programmes on the TG Cahir player have Irish subtitles. I'm pretty sure that all of the Russ Naroon episodes do, and I'll just type that up. So this is a soap. So one of the soaps that's on Russ Naroon, that's on TG Cahir, so it's called Russ Naroon. So I believe that it's both English and Irish subtitles. There's also the series Faduda. If my memory serves me right, that also has. So if you just type in on YouTube Faduda, you will come across the series of the same name. It may have been #Faduda, I'm not too sure, but you should be able to find it. Yeah, so it's actually #Faduda, but you will find there, and you will find the some programs there with Irish subtitles, but they're really just vlogs kind of, so it's a bit different, but there are some interesting ones on let's say there was one I think made on the Black Cabs of Belfast, so it's an Ulster Irish. It's from I think it's created by BBC Gaeilge, or BBC, yeah, I think that's what it's called. But if you type that into YouTube anyway, you should get that. And of course I'll dig up the link and add it in the blog post. Yeah. So let's see if we have anything else there then. And you also had a question on downloadable keyboards. So for the traditional Insular Gaelic, so the Insular Gaelic, would that be in reference to which font would that be referencing now? That's the what is that? Would that be the
Old Irish?
Yeah, or just the Cló Gaelic. Well, if it's just the Cló, yeah, the Cló Gaelic, there is a place where you can download and Cló Gaelic. There's a website, and it's Gaelclo, I think it's called. Gaelclo, if I could, I think I'm correct in that. Yes, it's Gaelclo. So if you check out their website now, it's all in Irish, or it used to be anyway. So it's Gaelclo. So I'll just type that up there. So put that in the screen. So that's Gaelclo. How to get that to show? Oh yeah, Gaelclo. So if you try that, you'll find lots of different variations of it and ways to download it and stuff like that. So anything else there?
There's one here now from Michael Curtin. He said, I've seen the Irish word for son spelled Mick as well as Mock. Is that dialect or two different ways to spell? So Mick is the genitive, Tishil Ginidach, of Mock. So the name of my son, Animovic, it wouldn't be Animovac, it would be Animovic. So that's a grammatical thing. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Tishil Ginidach before, so I don't want to scare you with that, but it's just a grammatical version of the word Mock. So that's just something to clear up for yourself there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all right. And oh yeah, and very good. That's true as well. Mick can also be the plural of Mock, so it can also mean son. So you have to tell from context, and you would know if you would know if which is which. It's kind of like in English when you say sons, my son's name, and sons, how both of them are sons. There's just the apostrophe and without the apostrophe. So it's similar to that. It sounds silly kind of when you just say it and just like, oh, Mick just means the genitive, it also means the plural. But when you think of it, it's the same in English. So yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So let's see, is there anything else there?
Someone asked what we find the most daunting aspect of grammar. I can't find it now. What grammar aspect of the Irish language do you find the most challenging? So what would you find the most challenging, Siobhán?
I think the whole thing about, I would say the whole thing about relative clauses and all of this thing, and when to use them, and relative particles, and when exactly to use them, when not to use them, and sometimes it depends on style, and sometimes some people can't agree, even the experts can't agree on which is which. So I think that's the clause all cuiv nest and stuff like that. So yeah, that can be a bit challenging. I think some people find that really easy, but I think that's what I think is most challenging.
Yeah, definitely can be a tricky one for sure.
Is there anything you find most challenging there yourself, Aisling?
I think I find putting adjectives into the Tishil Ginidach, depending if there's a few nouns and a few adjectives, and you have to put them all into the Tishil Ginidach, I find that quite difficult, because sometimes they won't take the genitive, sometimes they will. So I feel like we always kind of like just dodged it in school and in college a bit. So I think people are a bit afraid of it too. So I'm going to have to face it soon enough. Okay, let's see if there's anything else here now. So lovely to see all your comments and everywhere you're coming from all over the world. Someone from Rio de Janeiro, from Australia.
So yeah, that's a great point there. Brian Brew made Quail, Lehan, Lehan. You see it everywhere once you know it, and that's true. That's the thing about Irish grammar. It's so nice, not Irish grammar, I should say, but nice Irish spelling. It's very nicely balanced out, and everything fits into place mostly. That might come as a surprise to some, but it's actually quite phonetical, and it's pretty tidy and everything. It's just it's just tidy in its own manner.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point as well. Someone asked, how would you say you are the greatest, Kate? So it's for their partner. So I would say is tu is sure for that. Would you have any other way of saying that, Siobhán?
Oh, that's a good one. Anything else? Nothing really else comes to mind, I think, for that one. You're the greatest, too, as far. Yeah, that's a nice way. Nice way of saying it. Yeah.
I see this one coming up a few times. People confused about saying yes or no in Irish. So there is no way to say yes or no in Irish. You answer with the verb that was used in the question. So if you're ever speaking to an Irish person in English and they would ask you, did you go there? And they said, I did. That's where that comes from in English. It's from Irish. So chuir tú é sin chuir, an dhearna tú é sin rinne. So you answer with whatever verb was used in the question. So you have to be a good listener, I think, to be answering questions. Ask Gaeilge. So there's no yes or no. You have to answer with the verb used in the question.
That's it. And as long as you know the verbs, it'll be grand, I think. That's it. It comes naturally.
Exactly.
Especially, I think, to Irish people, because we're kind of used to saying it in English anyway. Like did you run the half mile? Oh, I did. I ran that. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a question here about Gaeilge na Halban. So léis féin ruting Gaeilge na Halban riomh gonna sa bhí sé. So that's a good one. It's can maithé sin, because today I just tried out the Scottish Gaelic course on Duolingo, just to the placement test to see how I'd get along. And I'm on the second section or whatever, so that means I was placed kind of like 17 stages in, or 17 like courses in. I'm not too sure the correct terminology. So I thought that was very interesting, and I just found the similarities amazing, and how the most common word, let's say for hair, for example, the word for hair is fult, but grúig is what we've usually used, but fult means a head of hair in Irish. But they actually in Scots Gaelic use it as just hair in general. So like lots of like similarities and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting. It was like hi, it's just like tá sé, and it's really just like a very strong dialect, but it takes getting used to it. What do you think of it, Aisling?
There's a few Scots Gaelic accounts I follow on Instagram. So they'd be kind of vloggers, and they'd just be chatting in their stories in Scots Gaelic, and I can understand a lot of it. So they'd put it up in English at the end as well. And I'd say, okay, I got that. It's kind of very close to Ulster Irish as well. So if you get that, you can kind of understand Scots Gaelic as well. So it's very interesting. But people are kind of talking about Duolingo for Irish. So there's a few people here asking about that. I mean, I would recommend Duolingo to start learning Irish. I had a student when I was living in Canada, Christine, and she used Duolingo and she found it very useful. Now, it doesn't really go into the nitty-gritty of grammar a lot of the time. So if you have a grammatical question or something, it might not be the best, but it's great to kind of get your foundation going. So I would highly recommend it, definitely. Do you have any experience with the Irish Duolingo, Siobhán?
Not really. I've heard some people kind of complain about that some of the pronunciations aren't maybe the best, or maybe that's been changed since. I'm not too sure. But I'd say it is. I can't see it doing much harm if you're just a beginner, or even just to play around with, just to keep yourself. Just to keep yourself brushing up on things and keep yourself on top of things. I used it for that for French when I was doing the Leaving Cert. So it has its uses. It depends, I guess. It depends on the person as well. Some people just find it tedious. Anytime I've used it, I found it very tedious. But it's changed again, it seems. I think they've actually improved it since. And I think it depends as well if you use the mobile version or the desktop version. So it's good to just try it out. There's no harm. It's free. So just give it a go, and sure, it's better than doing nothing. That's for sure. It's better doing Duolingo than just sitting there and thinking I'd love to be learning Irish. So that's for sure. And of course, you can use it in conjunction with other things as well. So that's the thing. You don't have to just do Duolingo or anything. You can study from YouTube videos or try other things. So
yeah. I think it became the joke for a while. Duolingo was very repetitive, and then they kind of copped on to the joke and updated it. So it's gotten much better now.
Very good.
Okay. I think Well, sin gachrad.
Yeah, I think it's the hours up there. I think we might as well wrap it up.
Yeah,
so bhí sé go hínta gur fad si bheith icáil anmhathar fad. It was lovely to see y'all, and it was great to talk to you about all these different topics and answer your questions, and it's great to have this kind of human interaction instead of just trying to search things on Google. So it's really lovely for us all to come together in this way and discuss Irish.
Yeah, thank gur míle maith agat gach duine. Bhí daoine ann ó gach cairn den domhan, people who are here from all over the world, so tá sé just go háling ar fad gohfuil an ghailing ag bheile and it's something that Irish is attracting so many people, so gur míle maith agat bhí sé go húntach ar fad.
Bhí mar sin tásúla chun go bhaid mé caintlíomh go luair arís agus an bhfuil éon rud le fógairt agat an sin Aisling.
Beidir go curmid nask suicide. We might put a little link up to tasters there. So if you liked this Q&A, we have a taster for our membership program. You can try out some of the material for free, see if you like it, and then if you do, you can join up to become a member. So we have lots of more material available to you as a member. There's courses, there's live chats, there's forum blogs and everything like that. So much more available. So do have a look at that. Ach, sinna bhfuil is dócha. So Godín, céadar eile slán live.
Slán go fóilín.